Welcome to Lawyers Who Care, the video show podcast that highlights attorneys who go above and beyond for their clients. And on each episode, we will meet a new lawyer and they will share stories of where they went above and beyond legal counsel for the benefit of their client. My name is Andrew Samlin. I'm the principal of Samlin Wealth, a nationally recognized wealth management firm for lawyers, their firms, and their clients. And let's applaud lawyers who care and learn from them. Today, my guest is Todd Duffy. He is a founding partner of Duffy Amadeo LLP. And Todd is a highly experienced bankruptcy lawyer located in New York City. Welcome, Todd.
Thank you very much for having me, Andy.
So, Todd, tell us what brought you to the law.
Well, I've wanted to be a lawyer since I was 9. And I think that it started when, because who could remember back that far, right? I had an uncle who was so cool, and he was a criminal defense lawyer. And I watched him argue in court, and I just thought it was the greatest thing ever. And
wait, hold on. That's an interesting tidbit. You went with him to court. Like, how did that whole invitation process start?
I'm not sure because, again, 9 years old. And it wasn't the only time that I did that, right? I did it at 9, and then I did it again at 15. And in fact, my uncle was arguing in front of the Second Circuit. And the first time I argued in front of the Second Circuit, he was supposed to be there, but he couldn't make it. But I remember thinking to myself as I'm standing in front of a panel of judges, wow, this is the same place my uncle stood, all those years ago. So that was, when I was 9, and I persisted throughout my entire childhood wanting to be an attorney. And in between college, after college, I took 6 years off and became a paralegal. And it was when I became a paralegal that I realized, I was in a couple of different disciplines, corporate and then litigation. And I found myself in the bankruptcy group, and I just loved it. It is intellectual because there's all kinds of different types of law. It's fast paced and intense, and you're constantly in court and you're constantly before judges, and it's a small bar. It means that there's not as many bankruptcy lawyers around. And I just had, it's been exceptionally rewarding in a lot of different ways. After I was a paralegal, I ended up going to St. John's Law School, and I graduated in 2.5 years. And then did well enough to earn myself. I clerked for the chief bankruptcy judge of the Northern District of New York up in Utica, New York. And so after being with some large firms and a couple of small firms, I decided I wanted to do this on my own. And so in roughly 2006, same time as my first daughter was born, I had started my own firm. And I progressed to the point where I was solicited by a large firm to come in as a partner. And I did that for 4 years. And I thought, I really missed being on my own. I missed the impact that I had on my clients. I missed the relationship I had on my clients. And I missed the lack of politics, to be honest, with the firm.
What are the main differences between, a firm like Duffy Amadeo and, I don't want it, maybe even a big law, big 100 law?
Sure.
Or
sure.
What would that be from a client standpoint?
Absolutely. So I would say that there's two things, two of the most important things from a client perspective, at least from what I hear from the client's perspective, is that my rates are dramatically lower, even though I've had that big firm training because I grew up in 2 large firms. But you end up having that big firm training, and you're giving the client the benefit of that. The second part is that the way that the large firms really make that money is they pile associates on, like 4 or 5, 6 associates, and the partner on one case. But my partner and I are really versatile enough and fluid enough that we can actually do these kinds of things without associate help and without piling it on. So the bills are much smaller because there's a lot less lawyers billing the client.
And from a quality control standpoint, does maybe having a second or third set of eyes help, or is it?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's one of the reasons why I don't like to practice as a solo practitioner. I think your work product suffers. And if I am, to someday practice as a solo, I would work with someone have someone, looking over my shoulder, so to speak, because I think that it really does create those kinds of partnerships only make your work product much better.
And how does the bankruptcy area? What brought you, there as opposed to, when your first firm,
Mm-hmm.
when you were a paralegal, you had multiple views and multiple
Sure.
practice areas. How did you land there?
I really love the intensity of bankruptcy work, but most important to me was, even as a paralegal, I could see what effect it had on the client. So when I think I was still a law student, I went to a function of one of the professional associations, the American Bankruptcy Institute. And I went and I ended up being introduced to this judge named Neil Blackshear, who ended up being the first judge that I ever appeared before as a lawyer. And so we were talking, and he said to me, the thing about Chapter 11 is that it's great, but it's so expensive for businesses. Small businesses can't afford the relief that a bankruptcy would give them. And now, 25 years later, Congress passed a law that makes bankruptcy adaptable for small businesses with shorter timeframes and less requirements, and it makes it a lot easier for small businesses to get through the bankruptcy process quicker. And so these mom and pop stores, they can actually, where the line is so difficult to see between the owners and the business, this has such a direct impact on what is going to be able to be food, whether food's on the table, whether bills can get paid, that it's very rewarding. In my first iteration of this firm, I used to get Christmas cards from clients all the time, holiday cards all the time, wishing me a happy holiday, telling me how wonderful, how wonderful it was to work with me, and that they actually, it changed their lives in some instances. How could you beat that kind of reward? It's wonderful.
And so now that they've lowered the bar, so that everyday folk can enjoy that chapter,
Yes.
are there other chapters that, mom and dad or mom and pop shops can enjoy? And do you work on those as well, or?
I do. So traditionally what happens, or sometimes what happens, I shouldn't say traditionally, but many times what happens is that the business is indebted and is being sued. And so the litigants are coming up on the debtor, and the debtor needs a breather and it needs to stay so that everybody else will just back off, and you're not racing to the courthouse to dismember the debtor financially. So one of those litigants traditionally has what's known as a personal guarantee traditionally. And so if you have a personal guarantee as well as a debt, then when the debtor is the corporation and the corporation files, it doesn't get the corporation's principal out from under that debt. And so essentially, because the line is so blurred between these owners and these small businesses, you end up in the exact same place. So I have been able to either file a small business 11 for individuals, or a 7 or a 13 for those individuals, depending on how much the debt is and whether or not they would qualify.
And the PG, that becomes another thorn in their side.
It is, but because you have business debt, right, and you have, depending on what your income is, of course, it's much easier to qualify for a Chapter 7 as a PG, right? And then you can bring your business out by restructuring it. And with that kind of pressure on creditors, you traditionally can get them a good deal where they're restructuring everything. They can have it back down to manageable payments. They come out confirmed, their plan is confirmed, and then they have a fresh start with their business. They can keep all their employees, which most times is less than 10, and they can feed their families, all of them, respectively, and they can go on to contribute to the local area that I'm proud to be a part of.
By the way, this is my guest, Todd Duffy. He is a founding partner of Duffy Amadeo LLP. Todd, just so guests who want to get in touch with you, can you share your phone number twice?
Absolutely. It's 212-729-5832.
Great. And a website or any other way that folks can
Sure.
get in touch
It's
with you?
www.DuffyAmadeo, DuffyAm as in Mary, D as in David, EO.com.
And this has been the Lawyers Who Care video show podcast that highlights attorneys who go above and beyond. And I think Todd is an excellent example of that, particularly when the rubber hits the road, because this is everyday real life. This is not in the theoretical. Todd obviously has studied this his entire professional life, and this is his focus. If you're an attorney or know one who goes above and beyond, please feel free to reach out to us, 914-666-6600, 914-666-6600. And Todd, thank you so much again for joining us today.
Thank you for the opportunity, and I appreciate it. It was wonderful talking with you.